In the history of the American judicial system, the cry of "and justice for all" stands as the foundation of who we are and what we believe.
We want to believe in our police officers. We want to believe in our justice system that they wouldn't arrest somebody if they didn't do something.
Injustice, a new up-to-the-minute crime reality series, will lay bare for the first time how the justice system really works and how the discovery of DNA has caused it to reinvent itself and ultimately free hundreds of innocent victims.
Ray Crone is probably one of the most famous DNA exonerations in America. He was known as the Snaggletooth Killer. He was given that name because of a terrible sexual assault and murder that occurred at a bar in Phoenix, Arizona. The victim, Kim Ancona, was found dead in the men's restroom after closing hours in the bar, and she had been in addition to being raped and killed, there was a bite mark on her left breast.
During the trial, forensic dentist Ray Rawson testified for the prosecution after analyzing bite marks on a styrofoam cup voluntarily given by defendant Ray Crone.
The police matched, they said, that bite mark to dental impressions taken of Ray Crone. They charged him, convicted him, and sentenced him to death based upon that bite mark.
I'm dumbfounded because I know darn well I didn't bite her. I know darn well I wasn't there. And this man to come up with conclusions, conclusively, a perfect match, and all this other words and his technical verbiage that he would use. So, I mean, this man was full of himself. Ray Rosen, we found out, was paid over $50,000 by the prosecutor. Over 10 times that we got to defend ourselves, the prosecutor paid for one expert.
There are studies of forensic dentists, by forensic dentists, that some of them show that they make many, many errors when you give them a bite mark lineup. Let's get one person to bite down into a piece of pigskin. Let's get 5 other people who may or may not include the original biter. Now we have a lineup and they're asked to compare. They frequently get the wrong person.
After 10 years, 2 trials, and his family mortgaging their homes to pay for legal help, Ray Crone was proven innocent by DNA.
That bite mark and his testimony is absolutely what convinced that jury that I did it, because there was nothing else. There was hair there that couldn't really be linked to me, footprints couldn't be linked to me, blood that couldn't be linked to me, no motive.
The other principal problem in Ray Crone's case was the determination by law enforcement that once they had their man, they were not going to look at anything else. The real perpetrator in that case lived 600 yards from the bar, was an obvious suspect and was never looked at because of what I think we all now would acknowledge as tunnel vision.
The people that are investigating these crimes, that are responsible for prosecuting these crimes, don't care if they can find a motive or not. They just care if they got somebody they can build a story about and make look bad. And that really scares me, because if they can do it to me, they can do it to anybody.
At any step along the way, one small detail can lead to years in prison for the wrongfully convicted.
You know, again, I know how lucky I am because of the fortuitous circumstance, but this shouldn't be about luck. But goddamn, that's the justice system is a whole lot about luck.
Injustice will do more than show how these reversals change the lives of innocent victims. It will reveal how these convictions occurred in the first place, how the justice system failed these citizens instead of protecting them, and how it severely altered their lives and the lives of many others forever.
I am the chair of the Arizona Justice Project, and I am one of the lawyers from the Arizona Attorneys for Criminal Justice who founded the Justice Project in 1998. When our project started, people used to ask the question whether the criminal justice system gets it wrong. That no longer happens. 261 DNA exonerations have removed the whether question. Now we ask your question. Why do we get it wrong? How do we get it wrong?
It ain't about being guilty and hiding from it. It's about being innocent and worrying about protecting yourself.
That's the reality of it. I think the reality of it is that every criminal defendant, the reality of it is that their obligation is to demonstrate to the jurors that they are innocent beyond a reasonable doubt.
Why that one small detail false eyewitness, false testimony by informants, laboratory mistakes, inadequate defense, forced confessions, phony forensic evidence, jury manipulation. They all lead to wrongful convictions and sometimes wrongful executions.
But that's his word. Looked me dead. I said, Ray, you don't know how close that was. How many other people was that close the wrong way?
The following are some of the stories we will tell on injustice. We'll shape the human story around the facts of these cases. Calvin Willis was picked out of photo lineups by 3 young girls who were raped in their Shreveport home in 1982. He was convicted and sentenced to life. 22 years later, DNA exonerated him.
There are prosecutors, and many of them in the United States, who to this day think that the frequency of wrongful convictions is so rare that we shouldn't be worrying about it.
Earl Washington is developmentally disabled. Police convinced him to make a statement concerning the rape and murder of 19-year-old Rebecca Williams in Culpeper, Virginia in 1982. He was convicted and sentenced to death for the crime. 18 years later, additional DNA tests proved Earl innocent. Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore granted Earl an absolute pardon. The U.S. Supreme Court cited this case in the 2002 decision to abolish the execution of mentally retarded offenders.
We ought to catch the person who did it and convict them, and we ought to leave an innocent person alone. And one great hope was that forensic science would improve police work so that we would make fewer mistakes. We'd imprison or execute fewer innocent people.
Harold Wilson was convicted of murder and sentenced to death after the murder and robbery of 3 people in South Philadelphia. He was prosecuted during his 1989 trial by Assistant District Attorney Jack McMahon, best known for advising new prosecutors how to use race in selecting death penalty juries. After 16 years and 3 death sentences, DNA evidence led to the acquittal of Harold Wilson on November 15, 2005.
Every time we have a wrongful conviction, we know that the criminal justice system has failed in some way. We owe it to ourselves and to the American people to find out why, just as if there were a train wreck. If there was a train wreck, we would want to know how it happened so we could hopefully assist in making sure it doesn't happen again. Well, the same thing is true of the criminal justice system. It's true in medicine, it's true in train wrecks, it's true in airplane crashes, and it ought to be true in the criminal justice system.
We have many more stories of exonerated death row victims and their family members, and we have 200 more cases of those wrongfully convicted and imprisoned, but not on death row, willing to tell their stories on injustice. Their time is now. Their years in prison are over, and their lives are just beginning again. They are telling their stories, so it won't happen to you.